Hey darlings. Alyona was crying and flying home. It was raining, and she got wet all over. The dressy scarf that the girl put on in honor of the solemn occasion covered her body. Her hair was hanging along her face with dull strands. Alyona didn't even think of looking for a cover. On the contrary, it's even better this way. You can't see the tears running down her cheeks. You could think that it was a drop of rain. Oleg, how could he? These are his eyes. The fragile gaze he was trying to hide from her. The man Alyona had long considered the bravest, the most reliable and loving, almost hid behind the back of his silent father. But the mother of the family did not hesitate to say, "No," she said a lot that evening. "The destination is near. It is already distinguishable by the large mall, which is located just 2 minutes away from the house." Oh my! Alyona got from the center in about half an hour. She would have waited for the bus longer, that's for sure. That's what stress does to people. The girl didn't notice how she waved about kilometers. Alyona stopped. "No, you can't be at home in this condition. There is Mom. She will start asking questions, getting worried, nervous. And it's harmful to her. Even dangerous. Mom." Somewhere in Alyona's stomach, an unpleasant cold lump moved. Mom has a very sick heart. With age, the disease progresses, especially in recent times. Mom needs to avoid unnecessary worries. That's why Alyona is going to the mall now. She'll dry up a little, drink a cup of coffee at the food court, sit down, come to her senses, and then she'll put on one of her signature friendly smiles on her face, and only then she'll show her parents' eyes. Alyona has been used to taking care of her mom since childhood. Many times the girl witnessed her crimes. Sometimes her mother was taken to the hospital, and the not-so-adult Alyona stayed for a few days or even a week alone. Under the supervision of her neighbors, of course, but still. Alyona had no mother or relatives who could look after the girl. They were alone in the whole world. One day Alyona found out that mother was not allowed to give birth at all. She listened to the conversation of the mother and her friend. Then the girl, of course, asked the mother questions. At first she refused, tried to convince the daughter, and then confessed. Yes, she said, they warned, but their predictions turned out to be wrong. They didn't believe that I would bring you up at all. I was predicted to die by midterm. How did you decide? And I thought, why should I live if I don't have you? You've already been with me, lived under my heart. And how could I get rid of you? No, this is the most right decision in my life. Alyona sometimes felt guilty because it was her mother in such a state. But the mother, noticing this, even got angry at her daughter. Don't think about it. I myself really wanted a child. How could you influence my decision? Think. I wanted to have just such a daughter, and I'm happy that I went beyond all forecasts. And by the way, I was right. Well, yes, my heart is fluttering. Where is the guarantee that this would not happen without a child? Anyway, since childhood, I have a sick child. And the doctors said at first that I would die during pregnancy. Then they said that I would not survive the childbirth. Then they assured that my child would be in the orphanage at the age of 2 or 3. But what do we really have? Mother often repeated to Alyona that her daughter is the most priceless gift that made her life, that it is a great happiness to have such a wonderful child. And sometimes she also talked about Alyona's father. And the girl realized that her mother loved this man very much, although she knew him nothing. They met by chance, met in St. Petersburg on the Troitsky Bridge. A handsome young man came to the northern capital for a student conference, and his mother, then future Alyona, for the first time in her life, went to have a rest. She recently finished college, got a partner in an atelier, and started to earn well at that time. So she saved up for a year for a tour. Young people immediately liked each other. They walked together for a long time along picturesque St. Petersburg streets, sat in a cafe. The student turned out to be such a smart and interesting interlocutor that the young girl listened to him, breathing in, Then they went to his room, right that same evening. Both believed that this was only the beginning of their relationship, but fate had its own way. They agreed to meet at the monument for lunch the next day, after the boy's next semester ends. But the girl had never waited for her lover. At first she thought the student had cheated on her, but how? He looked at her with admiration, gently held her hands. No, it doesn't look like the truth. Eyes can't lie. And then the girl went to the hotel where the young man had stopped. There it turned out that the students were urgently taken to some military training camp, teaching or something like that. So he just couldn't come to her, couldn't get out. That's how we got lost, said with a sad smile to Mom Alyona, telling her this story. There were no social networks back then, so it was impossible to find each other in the vastness of a huge country. We didn't have time to exchange addresses. I was looking for him, trying to find out information about his city or the university in that very hotel. They refused there. The information is still confidential. He must have tried to find me too, but at least I have you left. And how could I refuse such happiness? Alyona lined up at the table that was hidden behind the column. She didn't want people to look at her now. They flowed through the upper floor of the mall with endless flow. They met in love couples among them. Young people hugged and smiled at each other, just like they did with Oleg recently. But of course, it's not a fact that happiness will last long. It's not a fact at all. The smiling waiter brought Alyona coffee and wished her a good day. He looked so kind and kind-hearted, but in fact he was indifferent. He doesn't care what Alyona's day will be like. It's just his job. The only person in the world who doesn't care about the girl. Her health is getting worse. Until this evening, the girl hoped that Oleg also loves her. He has told her many times. He lied, I guess. Alyona enjoyed a hot, aromatic drink. The blissful warmth spread throughout her body. It even became a little easier. Perhaps it's not so bad that Oleg showed his essence today. It would be much worse if their relationship went further, became more serious, and then he would have revealed her true face. Although much more serious. Alyona thought that he would make her some suggestions. Otherwise, what would he call parents to meet? Isn't this a sign of serious intentions? Alyona recently graduated from college. She also became a partner like her mother. The girl loved this business from an early age. Being still a very little girl, she embroidered her numerous dolls. She liked to invent interesting models, to pick up the material. The process itself also brought the girls pleasure. It's a miracle, isn't it? There was a piece of fabric or a few pieces, and now this shapeless thing has turned into a wonderful dress, which makes any doll a princess. Mom worked a lot, so the girl often stayed alone. But she never got bored. She was always distracted and entertained, and gave pleasure. When her mother came back from work, she was sincerely amazed by her daughters' creations, and she continued that modeler's career. She even took these mini-stevs of Alyona to her studio and showed them to her colleagues. But no modeler from Alyona, of course, came out. She graduated from college after school and got a sewing profession. And now she worked in an atelier not far from home. She liked her job. She had everything in her hands. The management praised the young, enthusiastic employee. No one could be as virtuoso as she was to fit an outfit in her figure. Over time, it was she who began to trust the most difficult cases. And the girl was doing great. She even liked the difficult tasks. She perceived them as a challenge. Alyona ordered another coffee. She needed to warm up. She still had to get sick and infect her mother. She couldn't get sick. Alyona has done almost impossible recently and agreed to consult a cardiology professor. And it was absolutely free. Soon, she will be examined by the best specialist in the region. And maybe he will find a treatment scheme that will make it easier for a woman who is not old at all. Mom is almost 40, and at the same time, as a 100-year-old woman, she suffocates when walking. And her shelf in the bathroom cabinet, with batteries and medicine, All this made Alyona feel painful and very scared. Oleg. Oleg distracted the girl from these sad thoughts. He switched them. With his very existence, he lived as if in some other world. The son of wealthy parents was running around like a boneless moth. Meetings with friends, travels, parties, always smiling and cheerful, and he seemed to be charging with his optimism. And Oleg, of course, is handsome, that one more. Tall, athletic, right features of the face, wide, white-tongued smile, charming cheeks, and eternal bronze tan on the body. Oleg often traveled with his parents. Even in winter they flew to the ocean where they took sun baths and swam in the turquoise waves. And Oleg dressed stylishly and with taste. He looked like a guy from a fashionable magazine and could easily become a model. But he had completely different plans for this life. Oleg studied in a prestigious economic university. When they met with Alyona and only met, the guy was just finishing his first year. A difficult but interesting year was ahead. State exams, writing a diploma, graduation, and then the work on the father, a famous local businessman, owner of a car service network. What could be common in this bright representative of the golden youth and poor girl who recently graduated from college and working as a seamstress? And then they had a fateful meeting at the nightclub. Alyona had never been a fan of such places. First of all, it was very expensive. For a trip to this club, Alyona spent half of her salary, which was extremely irrational in her situation. But Sveta, a childhood friend and neighbor, asked so, literally begged Alyona to join her company. Sveta always dreamed of a beautiful life and planned to dive into the atmosphere of an expensive nightclub for at least one evening. She even bought a dress specifically for this. How could Alyona refuse? Alyona did not like this place at once. The girls took a table and Sveta immediately threw herself on the dance floor. Alyona was entertaining the silhouette of her friends among the dancing crowds and was confused. Well, what can be liked here? The music is so loud that the drum the music is. It was she who guessed from the shape of the clothes, not Sveta in her dress. Almost all the girls in the club were dressed in the same way as Alyona. Not at all. A couple of times Sveta managed to get her friend to the dance floor. Well, did you come here to sit down? Sveta asked with burning eyes of joy. And Alyona danced among this crowd of young people. Yes, it was nice to relax and give up the sound waves. At one of these moments, Oleg came up to her. He just stood next to her and began to dance, copying and complimenting Alyona's movements. The girl, noticing this, was embarrassed, stopped, but he politely smiled at her, took her hand and led her, circled Alyona in the dance. Yes, so clever and sure that they two seemed to become one whole. It was incredible feelings. During the dance, the girl looked at her unexpected gentleman. Beautiful, incredibly beautiful and stylish, and dressed very expensive. Alyona was perfectly understanding of things, because she worked in an atelier. The young man had clothes of expensive brands. How did this guy even pay attention to her? Maybe the dance will end. He will smile and go to his same rich friends? Most likely, he just liked how Alyona danced. So he made her a couple for a few minutes. But Oleg didn't leave. He asked for permission to take Alyona to her table. And since there was no one behind the table, since Svetka continued to conquer the dance floor, the young man suggested leaving Alyona company. Oh yes. The girl's heart was beating like a hammer. She could not believe that such a guy wanted to talk to her. They honestly tried to talk that evening, but loud music. Because of her, it was practically impossible. And yet, Oleg managed to make Alyona fall in love with such compliments that she had never heard before. You are very beautiful and plastic. You have just beautiful eyes. As soon as I saw them, something turned in my direction. Oleg said this while looking straight at Alyona, and he looked very serious at that moment. The guy clearly did not joke and did not lie. He said what he felt. Alyona was confused. She had only heard compliments about her undoubted talent, sewing. The girl couldn't imagine how beautiful she was. The boys didn't pay attention to her at school. They only noticed the classmates with much more outstanding forms. What about Alyona? She was thin, tall, angular. In college, there were no boys, as at work. So Alyona was the first to receive such amazing compliments, from which her head went round. Of course, she immediately fell in love with Oleg. In her mind, he was the most beautiful guy on earth. Only, I didn't believe that something was possible between them. Too different. Oleg asked Alyona to leave his phone number. She dictated the numbers. The young man made a call and asked her to save his number. Then Oleg took a taxi to his house and both of his friends. Sveta tried to flirt with the young handsome man all the way. She, hot with drinks and bright emotions, did not immediately notice that Oleg obviously sympathizes with her. The guy was very gentle in his attacks, trying not to offend Sveta. He conquered Alyona even more. Oh my, such a sensitive and warning guy. Before the farewell, Oleg kissed Alyona's hand. It was clear that he wanted more. To hold the girl to himself, or even kiss her in the lips, Alyona felt it. But the guy held back and limited himself with an elegant gesture. And still, Alyona didn't believe that Oleg would call her back. The next day was a day off. She didn't need to go to work. The girl was in a state of tension from the very morning. On the one hand, she wanted Oleg to call her back. She really wanted to experience these feelings again, as she did yesterday. On the other hand, Alyona was even a little afraid of this. And in the afternoon, Oleg gets disappointed in it. He notices some flaws, invisible in the rays of light music. He will feel it boring. He will finally understand that they are not the same field of berries. It will hurt to see disappointment in his eyes. Oleg called and said that he would come to pick Alyona in an hour. He suggested going to the city ponds, taking a walk in the park, getting to know each other better, and added that nothing else except their last meeting, and he couldn't think all this time. In an hour. Just in an hour. Alyona was very worried before this date. She tried on all her outfits, choosing the best ones. She even applied a light makeup, which she had never done before. "Are you going to a date?" she asked with a smile. Alyona nodded. "I am so glad for you. I hope you are a good person. Just be careful, okay?" "Don't worry, Mom. We're going to a crowded place," said Alyona's parents. The girl didn't mention that she would go to a crowded place in a car of a guy she barely knew. Why bother her? "I can't explain. I can't prove that Oleg is definitely a good person, and nothing will make her feel bad. Mom didn't talk to him, didn't see his eyes. And it's unlikely that we'll be able to tell you all this in words." Alyona, of course, was not very good at cars. But when she saw the foreign brand, Oleg was stunned. She immediately realized that this was a very expensive model. Dark blue, glossy. Despite the huge difference in the wealth, Oleg behaved simply and sincerely with Alyona. He joked, said compliments to the girl, asked questions about her life, and talked about himself. Gradually, Alyona relaxed. Oleg, he is so natural, so smart, so cute. He doesn't look like majors, spoiled sons of rich parents. And enough with the stereotypes. All people are different. They walked around the beautiful park for a long time, admiring fountains. They fed ducks, sat in cafes in the open air, laughed and talked. "It feels like I finally met my family soul, shared my impressions of Oleg. You are so real. I have never met anyone like that before. And what others?" Alyona smiled. "Artificial, or what?" "Exactly artificial," the guy exclaimed. "Very accurate word. Most girls, they are like a copy. Ticklish, demanding, capricious. They see only a wallet in me. Well, and a pleasant appearance. It is felt. And with you everything is completely different." These words warmed Alyona's heart. She was pleased to realize that she was special to Oleg and not one of many. Yes, you just have to sympathize, the girl joked. Apparently, you didn't spin in circles. Apparently, Oleg smiled with warmth, looking at his interlocutor. Their novel reminded a fairy tale. Alyona didn't even dream of such a thing. The girl loved novels and soft covers, but never thought that one day she would become practically a heroine of such an honor. Oleg made her surprises, gave compliments, brought her to the most interesting and unusual places of the city, the existence of which Alyona did not even suspect. He sincerely enjoyed her reactions, surprise, and admiration. "You are so easy to please, so easy to surprise," he said sometimes. "It's so nice. I feel myself next to you, a completely different person. I can't even express it." Oleg was very impressed with sincerity and unwavering aloneness. And a young man often reminded her of what kind of beauty she is. He showed photos of famous models and actresses who look like her, gave Alyona things that emphasized the dignity of her appearance. Oleg took care of Alyona. He tried to please her and protect her. It was so nice. The girl was already beginning to feel like a real princess, beautiful, fragile, and beloved. She had never thought about herself like that before. Of course, Mom noticed the changes happening with her daughter, and she knew about her boyfriend. But they weren't friends. The woman asked her daughter questions about her choice. After finding out that she was very rich, she got a little tense. "Be careful, my daughter. After all, rich people choose to live in the satellite, and with the rest they just have fun and spend time." "Well, what kind of stereotypes, Mom?" Alyona argued. Of course, her mother doesn't understand anything. She doesn't know Oleg, doesn't see how someone looks at her. Oleg, he's not like that. And in general, the SD century is in the yard, and you still suffer from some kind of past experiences. I just don't want him to break your heart." The woman shook her head, looking at her daughter with anxiety. And what's the result? Mom turned out to be right. Time passes, and nothing changes. Maybe at first Oleg was really enchanted by Alyona. In fact, she was not like his previous girlfriends. Humble, not spoiled, hardworking, no caprices, solid obedience and admiration. Alyona, in an attempt to like Oleg, even if she thought otherwise, she wanted him to be good to her. But they certainly couldn't have a common future. Only then, the blind girl refused to accept this fact. Alyona and Oleg were together for almost a year. Relationships between them became more serious. The girl could no longer live without her beloved. He also wanted to spend as much time with her as possible. But he didn't have as much time as he wanted. Oleg was finishing his studies, finishing his last year, and he often flew to the sea with his parents. From warm lands, the boy brought his favorite gifts, interesting decorations, bright souvenirs, exotic outfits. The girl missed him. Oleg said that he was also sad there on the beaches without his beloved. "Someday I will show you all this beauty. You will look great in a white swimwear against the ocean waves. I will finish university and announce to my friends that I have a bride." Bride? Alyona's heart went somewhere in the abyss. Really? It looks like an offer. I put it aside for a while, but still. Of course, I'm going to marry Oleg. Don't you mind? I thought it was obvious that we would get married soon. It's not the right time yet, but this event is not far away. Alyona just hugged Oleg, pressed on him, and closed her eyes. She felt really happy. Oleg didn't make any offer. There was no ring, no wedding discussion. It was just. From that dialogue, it was clear that Oleg and Alyona would get married sooner or later. Then Oleg graduated, and his father hired him. As it was supposed to be from the very beginning. The guy started making decent money. Earlier, his parents were sponsoring him, which Oleg never hid. Now the guy became financially independent at a fast pace, which he was very happy about. Alyona was happy with him and dreamed that now he would finally make her an offer. But within a few months after the diploma was granted, the offer did not follow. But one day Oleg said that it was time for Alyona to meet his parents, because their relationship is very serious, so the family is eager to talk to the daughter-in-law of the only heir. Do you think it is necessary? Alyona clarified. Her meeting with Oleg's relatives was very disturbing. For him, it was always very important that the girl knew this, and was afraid to disappoint the parents of her beloved. Of course, it was a must. But why are you worrying? Everything will be fine. As always, Alyona immediately believed Oleg's words. Because, well, he seemed strong, reliable, decisive back then. If your beloved says everything will be fine, then that's how it will happen. The meeting was scheduled for Friday evening in one of the most luxurious restaurants in the city. Alyona looked at the photo of the setting of this place in the social networks in advance for the sake of interest, and began to worry even more. In such interiors, she always felt awkward, although Oleg periodically invited her to such a place. But then Oleg, his own man, and this time she will have to communicate with his parents. It is not known how they will react to her. On the other hand, even if she does not like her mother and father, it will not affect their relations with Oleg. He is already independent and adult. He makes the choice himself. He decides everything in his life. Oleg has emphasized this more than once. So Alyona's happiness is not at stake in this situation. But still, she wanted to please her parents, so that in their future family they could have peace, comfort, and warm relations. Alyona didn't tell her mother about the upcoming meeting. Otherwise, she would have been really worried. And she couldn't. Lately, the situation with Alyona's mother's health has been getting worse. A very young woman was exhausted. She often had a headache, a heartache. She barely got to work, with stops at every post to catch a breath. Doctors were giving birth by hand. What do you want? You have a serious problem. You were told that you can't give birth. You didn't listen. The disease progresses quickly. We are not gods. We can't do miracles. In the hospital where Alyona's mother was now visiting almost every week, hoping to get a new effective treatment, she was always told the same thing. But it's okay. The consultation with the professor, about which Alyona had agreed, will soon take place. This man was a doctor, and he will definitely help them. Before the restaurant, Alyona decided to get on the trolley bus. She didn't have any money left for a taxi. She had to work for a week. The lion's share of the earnings went to the medicine for her mother at the beginning of the month. But it's okay. Think about the trolley bus. Alyona even liked to drive through the whole city on such a transport and look out the window. She sometimes chose long routes on purpose. You admire the city landscapes from the window and think about something of your own. But this time the girl, of course, could not relax. She was constantly spinning herself with anxious thoughts. She was restless in her soul. Intuition was telling Alyona that the meeting would hardly go smoothly. And as it turned out later, she was a little bit lost. The salon was almost empty. The peak hour had passed a long time ago. Alyona sat, leaning her forehead against the wall. She looked at the window and tried to calm down, but nothing worked. Maybe she shouldn't have put on that scarf. It's long enough, decent. It's not as long as her knee, but her shoulders are too open. Don't the parents of Oleg think that her outfit is vulgar? Maybe it was worth stopping the choice on a light business suit? But she didn't go to the office, did she? Alyona's thoughts were interrupted by the driver's wistful cry. And it's not a shame to ride a hare in public transport at such an age. The girl's gaze was in the direction of sound. At the far end of the salon, next to the driver's seat, an ugly scene unfolded. The driver in an orange vest, a woman of high quality, with white, cheap hair, hung over the old lady. She sat down, holding her mother's bag, full of something, and looked at the watchtower with the stairs. I'm explaining to you, my dear man. I'm going to my grandson's hospital. I spent all my pension on a hotel for him. Do you understand? No? Well, What a pity if I quietly spend a few stops here. The salon is still empty, and if I fill up, I'll get up from this place and stand in the corner. I won't take the chair for nothing. It's not your business if it's empty, the driver said. This shouldn't concern you, but it is supposed to pay for the ticket. Be kind and pay the necessary amount. If I let everyone ride like this for free, they would stop paying me for the salary. Pay or leave. The old lady said everything about the grandchild who got into the hospital and needs a transfer, and that he is lucky to have a caring grandmother. There are medicines, food, and other things. The old woman tried to reach the driver. She was holding her heart and even seemed ready to cry. But the controller remained ungrateful. She demanded money from the old passenger for the ride. Otherwise, she was offered to leave the salon. Alyona suddenly felt very sorry for this old woman, who was so eager to see her grandson. Maybe, indeed, no one has come to see a man anymore. Who knows what kind of situation people are in? The fee for the ride is not so great. Of course, Alyona is far from rich, but she will definitely find such a sum for a good cause. The old woman had such eyes, full of despair and fear. No, Alyona just couldn't, like the rest of the few passengers, watch this scene with the same mind. Here, I will pay for this, Granny. Alyona stretched the conductor a little. She looked at the old lady with contempt and gave Alyona a ticket. The girl immediately handed over his granny and wanted to return to her place. But the saved passenger grabbed her by the hand with her dry and suddenly strong palm. Thank you, the old woman said. Thank you for the kind deed. Don't think I'm some kind of beggar. I have a pension. I've worked all my life at the factory. Yes, this month the trouble came out. Grandson got into an accident. Andre. He had to buy everything. So I took him to the hospital. There was no money left. You give me your phone number, and I will transfer the money to you. Another surprise. It turns out that this old woman knows how to use a mobile bank. A modern old woman, however. No, don't do that. Don't hurt her. The girl remained ungrateful. This amount is worth it. An old woman, as you can see, is in a difficult financial situation. The old lady thanked Alyona all the way to the hospital and told her about her grandson Andre. It turned out that this is a very worthy young man. Grandmother was worried about him. After the accident, he ended up in the hospital with injuries, but she was glad that her grandson had still been relatively easy to get rid of. The wounds will heal. They will not go anywhere, said the word-hunting traveler. The main thing is to keep your head in order. Alyona nodded with a smile, and then the old woman went out on her stop, and the rest of the way the girl drove in silence. Companion, a little distracted her from the anxious thoughts, took off the excitement. But as soon as Alyona was left alone, the mandrake returned. Now, sitting at the table in the cafe, Alyona thoughtfully counted herself. She had to listen to her intuition and not go to this meeting. Now she clearly understood that nothing good could come of it. She saw the whole situation. But a few hours ago the girl was full of hope for a happy future together with Oleg. The luxurious atmosphere of the restaurant, of course, added excitement to the girl. Alyona immediately saw the table where Oleg and his parents were sitting. She noticed the girl and the boy with a smile moved towards her. He hugged her, stroked her back, and gave her a compliment about her favorite appearance. All this, of course, somewhat encouraged Alyona. Next to Oleg, she always had a sense of security. As it turned out later, it was a lie. The parents of Oleg looked, in principle, as Alyona imagined them. The father was a sporty, fit man with an elegant gray hair on the temples, tanned, beautiful. The same holes on the cheeks as Oleg's, the same sharp features of the face. It is immediately clear who the son looks like. The mother was a well-groomed woman, who was of course a frequent visitor to the beauty salons, smooth face with perfect skin, flawless manicure, royal posture and look. A cold look of light blue eyes. Alyona, as if she were under an icy shower when she was looking at her. In principle, at that moment she finally understood everything at an intuitive level, but still did not realize it. The hope for a successful outcome remained alive. "Well, hello, dear lady," said Oleg's father without a shadow of a smile. "Hello," the girl smiled broadly. "Finally we met." Oleg's mother stretched her lips in the likeness of a polite smile, but her eyes remained serious and cold. Everyone was present, the waiter ordered. At first the conversation was about everything and nothing. The weather, the city news. Alyona periodically inserted her remarks, trying to be a full-fledged participant in the conversation. After each of her phrases, the parents of Oleg looked over the situation. Alyona carefully watched their reactions. And Oleg too. He was looking at the faces of his parents, trying to count their emotions. At that moment, the young man was not looking at an adult, but at a small child. And Alyona didn't like it very much. Then the conversation began about Alyona. "Tell me a little about yourself," asked Oleg's mother. "Does our son treat you very seriously? Not every friend of his knows us. Although, of course, this is not the first time. Oleg, we have a very loving nature, and nevertheless, I would like to know more about you." Alyona was not the first to do this. She was clearly hinted at the fact that she was not unique and not the only one of her kind, but still one of them, and the tone of that rich, well-groomed woman was hostile. Metal notes were sounding in her voice. "Well," Alyona told them. Oleg's parents asked her time and again questions: who her mother was, where her father was, who Alyona was working for, what school she had graduated from. The girl's answers caused a strange reaction among these people. They looked around. They smiled. It was unpleasant. And Oleg? Oleg was sitting next to his mother and silent. He didn't even try to somehow discharge the atmosphere and help his girlfriend. "Why college?" Oleg's mother asked. "You probably studied at school, if you didn't go to university." Alyona let the hairpin pass by her ears. This lady is clearly trying to hurt her, to bring out the emotions. It won't happen. And at school Alyona was learning well, even very well. She just needed to get a job sooner, get a job. Their financial situation, their small family, was very shabby. But it's not to explain all this now. The conversation became more and more unpleasant. The questions and comments of Oleg's parents were getting more personal. They seemed to be turning Alyona the wrong way. The girl was telling about herself, and for some reason she was ashamed of the facts in her biography, although she did nothing bad to anyone. But Oleg's mother managed to change the story of Alyona about herself. The girl felt like she was behind this table, next to these people, a poor and limited a dead end, who had no brains to get to the bus. A lazy woman who wanted to get rich and thus solve her life problems. Or maybe she was like that in reality. Alyona, under the icy look of a woman who was unkindly, that she really was counting on Oleg's help in the case of treating her mother. Oleg didn't say a word. He didn't even look at Alyona. He moved closer to his father, and it so happened that the young man seemed to hide behind his mother's shoulder. They smeared Alyona, and Oleg didn't even try to step in for her. It didn't look like him at all. That the girl was even more confused. Oleg, he was always on her side. He supported, encouraged. But now the guy looked like a little boy who was afraid to cause discontent with his parents. And then Alyona realized everything to the end. No, they will not have any common future with Oleg. Now, his parents clearly showed this to their son. Their goal was not even to humiliate Alyona. They demonstrated to the only heir that the girl, a whore, living with her sick mother in a tiny apartment, was not a couple to him. And the son perfectly mastered the lesson. Oleg will never go against the will of his parents. He is too dependent on them. All his success and well-being, and his father's merit, Alyona's feelings, and her experiences were completely irrelevant to these people. The girl felt like a training assistant. Mother Oleg was not worried at all that such a fire could cause the girl a psychological trauma. She didn't care. The main thing is to show the son the mistake and the ridiculousness of his choice. Apparently, the meeting itself was set up for this. Alyona felt how her eyes were teared up. What did she do? What did she do wrong to these people? And in general, for all her life, Alyona did not do a single thing that she might be ashamed of. The girl stood up from her seat. I understood everything. I have to go. She still had time to cry in front of that family. No, she wouldn't give them such pleasure. Alyona hurried to the exit from the restaurant. Nobody tried to stop her. The girl still hoped that Oleg would follow her. But how? He loves her so much. He never talked about it. But Oleg stayed with his parents. The girl was crying outside. It was good that it was raining, and it was not noticeable to the others. Alyona did not wait for the trolley bus. She went on foot. The movement always calmed her down. The rain poured like from a bucket. Light Seraphine Alyona immediately got wet all over and covered her body. Passengers hid under the curtains in an attempt to wait for the rain, and Alyona shone along the way, not even noticing any inconvenience. She was not in the state she was in. Oleg, how could he do this to her? Alyona was sure of this man. She was glad that she was so lucky to meet his second half at the very beginning of his life. It seems that she had all the ideas. Oleg was only interested in the girl as a stranger. He was used to meeting spoiled princesses, but here was a modest girl who had never seen anything bright and interesting in her life. Perhaps he was pleased to feel like such a patron who opened the world to the poor beauty, but he clearly didn't have any special feelings for her. Otherwise, Oleg wouldn't sit like a thug, while his mother humiliates a defenseless girl in front of him. And now Alyona was sitting in the shopping mall, swallowing one cup of coffee for another. Her hair was almost completely dry, and now it was curled beautifully. The scarf also became dry, and Alyona came to her senses, so much so that she could now appear before her mother. She will behave as if nothing had happened, even if there is darkness in her soul, but her mother should not notice it. Mother must be cared for. This is the only person in the world who sincerely loves Alyona, and probably it will always be so. Men, most likely they are all the same as Oleg. They can sing beautifully in the ears, and then, having played, throw. Perhaps Alyona's father, was the same. Perhaps the mother hides something from her, or just does not understand that the guy in whom she once fell in love without a glance ran away from her. Alyona returned home and immediately went to the bathroom. It rained. Mom, who was in bed at that moment, asked, holding on to her heart. She felt bad again. Yes, the girl smiled carelessly. She got wet all over. I want to take a hot shower so as not to get sick. I'll make you some tea. No, you lie down, rest. I'll do it myself. In the shower, Alyona cried a little more. This time the tears brought relief. Bad emotions left with them. Alyona tried very hard to behave as if nothing had happened, but Mom noticed the changes that were happening with her daughter. From her attentive look, it was impossible to hide something. She had a fight with her colleague. How did you understand that? Well, first of all, you don't go on dates anymore. It's hard not to notice. Secondly, you have very sad eyes. Lately, we said goodbye, Alyona nodded. He seemed a little bit. The Oleg I fell in love with once, he was not at all, you know? I just came up with it. That's why I'm sad. But I will be smarter. Alyona smiled widely, demonstrating to her mother that everything is fine with her. Although, of course, the girl still felt pain. Her dreams of a happy life next to her beloved man were destroyed. Alyona still remembered the old Oleg, who existed in her imagination until the meeting at the restaurant. Alyona thought she met the perfect man, but then it turned out that such men most likely do not exist at all. How painful and terrible it was then. without being shy in her words and without caring about her feelings. If Oleg had at least tried to protect his girlfriend, support her, Alyona wouldn't have felt so empty-hearted. But alas, Alyona tried to live her previous life. She worked, met her friends, read a lot. To get distracted, she now constantly cleaned up in the apartment. The house shone with purity, but the soul was also clear and clean. Everything did not become. And then there was this long-awaited reception of the professor. Alyona went to the clinic with her mother. The professor was a tall, thin old man with transparent blue eyes. He carefully got acquainted with the history of the disease of a severe patient. He did not say anything, but assigned several additional researches. All the necessary procedures were carried out in the same clinic. Quickly, in a hurry, without any waiting. Professor himself took Alyona's mother to the offices. The girl was happy. What a careful attitude. There was no such thing in the local clinic. As it turned out, the professor was in a hurry for a reason. He, an experienced doctor, immediately realized that the situation was bad. The situation was critical. After all the tests, the three of them returned to the office. The professor was ready to give the verdict. "Well, I have nothing to please you," he said, with his hands. It's hard to believe that this is the result of a young woman's examination. Her heart is worn out. It barely works. The medicine won't help here. We need an operation. Alyona squeezed her mother's hands, who carefully grasped every word of the doctor, remaining calm and calm. The operation had to be done long ago. I don't understand how your leading doctor could start the situation like that. Professor's voice was clearly irritated. You can even try to sue him, but it's after. Now the main operation. And then the professor told the details. The upcoming operation was complicated. Very complicated. It's not every cardiologist who can afford to treat a patient in such condition. They need treatment in Moscow. And this is a trip, living, payment of expensive medicines. And the operation itself cost just a lot of money. When the professor announced the amount, Alyona was shocked. She and her mother just couldn't take this amount. Unless you sell your apartment and go out. But even if you do, real estate won't be realized so quickly. And you need money right now. All this needs to be done as soon as possible, said the professor, looking at the confused visitors. On the account of literally every day. And what will happen if you don't operate? Asked Mother Alyona. I just can't imagine where to get such a sum. Is it possible to get a drug therapy? No, the doctor said right away. No drugs will help you, only surgery. How can we do it? Alyona whispered. She barely fought with tears rolling into her eyes. All the previous experiences about disappointment in Oleg suddenly showed the girl complete nonsense. Here it is, a real disaster. And what to do with it is not clear. Try to turn to the charity fund, the professor advised. They opened the training camp. Many help. The doctor ran with his fingers on the keyboard in search of the right folder. He found the woman made a difficult choice for herself. Fight or leave everything as it is. Because the forces in this battle are too unequal. Alyona was eagerly looking for a way out. She did not see any other way but to fight. Fight for the life of her mother to the last. On her way home, the girl called every charity foundation on the list. Alyona hoped that they would be helped. She was sure of it, but no one wanted to fight. Alyona received different answers to her questions. Someone immediately said that they specialize exclusively in sick children, as if adults do not fall into difficult situations or want to live less. There were also unreasonable refusals without a reasonable explanation of the reasons, and only in one place Alyona opened her eyes. Do you understand? A woman who answered the phone said, the situation is not too effective. Small children are all sorry and they are being charged money. But the fathers and mothers of the children help to keep the orphans from being orphaned, especially mothers. Your mother is an adult woman, a working woman. Your daughter has grown up, so no one will go to the orphanage, if anything. There are almost no chances that she will respond to your request. Alyona was grateful to the interlocutor for this, albeit harsh, but true. At least now it is clear why they refuse all the funds. This means you have to find other ways to get out of a difficult situation. You can only hope for the funds to lose precious time. Mom, let's put the apartment on sale. It's cheaper for the buyer to find it soon, the girl suggested. What are you? The woman sighed. Operation. It is not known yet whether it will help or not. And how will you live? No, let everything go as it goes. No, Alyona exclaimed. No, don't even think about it. We won't find the money. We'll manage. Every moment of freedom. Alyona now monitored the vacancy. She was ready for anything. To travel north by yachts, to respond to dubious announcements, which clearly offered illegal activities for relatively good money. But the girl quickly realized that this was not the way out. While she was getting ready, while she worked for a couple of months to have the opportunity to form a loan, the precious time would have already passed. And she herself would not get into trouble, would not run into the fraudsters. Most of the ads in which the Golden Hills were promised looked too suspicious. And if something happens to her, how will Mom survive this? Who will help her? Alyona was in despair. She cried every day from helplessness, secretly from her mother. But she, on the contrary, looked surprisingly calm. She seemed to have taken her own fate and did not even try to do anything. She understood that it was useless. One day, Alyona took a desperate step. There was no one else to turn to. That's why she took Oleg. Yes, they didn't talk all this time. Oleg didn't call, didn't write. He didn't even try to apologize for his behavior in the restaurant. It seemed that he was quite satisfied with the fact that Alyona evaporated from his life herself. The problem was less. A mountain on his shoulders. The girl, after everything that happened, despised Oleg, considered him a lowly mother's son. Her name even irritated him. She deleted all the joint photos so as not to accidentally bump into them on the phone. These pictures hurt her again and again. She was so happy, so in love with them, and could not even imagine what was waiting for her ahead. But only Oleg could help her anyway. He is wealthy, does not count money. Perhaps he will give her the amount needed for the loan, even with interest, just to get the money soon. In the bank, Alyona will not be given such a loan for anything. Payability is too low, but she will try to work where possible, just to pay off the debt soon. Alyona is not afraid of work, but losing her mother's prospects is scary. Of course, it was not easy to get Oleg's number, but it was for the sake of her mother. If it were not for her illness, Alyona would never have turned to her unmarried fiancé. Oleg answered immediately. His voice sounded somewhat surprised, but neither guilt nor repentance sounded in him. Oleg talked to Alyona as if nothing had happened, as if a former classmate had suddenly called him. Well, hello, how are you? The boy politely said. Alyona did not recognize him. I hope you will not start telling me about your upset feelings now. I just don't like it. What happened, happened and passed. We live on. Alyona sighed. You see, my mother is very ill. I told you, remember? Her heart. I remember something like that. And what's next? And then she needs an operation urgently, otherwise she will die. I feel sorry for her. It's sad. I hope she will be fine. The problem is that the operation is not free. She's worth a whole bunch of money. We don't have any of that, and we can't get it anywhere. Ah, I see. Oleg smiled. Oh, my mother is a prophetess. She warned me that it would be like that. How? Alyona didn't understand, but she said that if the fish broke off the hook. However, Mom thought it would be a heartbreaking story about your own illness, or a news about a sudden pregnancy, but you have put your mother to shame. Alyona went crazy. Oleg really thinks that she just wants to make him pay. He didn't understand anything about her at all during the time they were dating. How could Oleg say such a thing? It's hurtful, painful, and hard. Unfair reproaches and accusations and mercantility hurt the soul. But Alyona took herself in her hands. She can't show weakness now. She can't run away. Oleg is her last hope. Oleg, listen, it's all true. I can show you the evidence. The professor's conclusion, the clinic's press curator. It's easy to get it right, my friend. The professor will call you himself. I'll ask him. Are you kidding me? Anyone can make this call. I found a bad one. Oleg, it's true. I'll prove it, and then I'm not just asking for a huge sum. I'll give it all. I'll write a list. I'll pay the debt and interest. I need to pay the operation as soon as possible. And they won't give me the loan. My official salary is too small. So how are you going to pay the debt then? You say you can't afford the loan. I will work day and night. But I need money urgently, right now. It's a heartbreaking story. It's a pity that such talent disappears for nothing. I could write a novel. Alec, it's true. I'm sick of it, the guy said. I'm sick of listening to this nonsense. At first I felt guilty that it all happened. You seemed to me a naive and sincere girl. And now I see that my mother was right. Your behavior was predicted with accuracy. That's it. Don't call me anymore. Alyona was dialing Oleg's number again and again. She just couldn't bring him the seriousness of the situation. We need to explain it better. He will understand. But Oleg seems to have blocked her number. That's all. The last hope has disappeared like dew on a hot summer day. Alyona couldn't imagine who to turn to. Oleg. He again trampled and humiliated her. He made her understand that he considered her a former fraud. He doesn't even want to talk to her. How could that be? Tears were pouring out of her eyes. She couldn't, and didn't want to, hold them back. She's been crying so often lately. Alyona was outside, right at the bus stop. It's good that there were no other people around. How could they have perceived the girl crying? But isn't it all the same? Alyona went down to the bench and hugged herself. She was shaking her body. She was shaking, and the girl couldn't do anything with that state. It was probably hysterics. Alyona was tired of fighting, tired of knocking on all doors and getting rejected everywhere. And then Oleg. I had to turn to a man who once trampled and humiliated her. And he did it again. But the main thing is that Alyona could not help her mother. Seeing how day-by-day life slowly leaves her loved one is unbearable. Mother was weakening literally in front of her. She didn't even go to work anymore. She was in the hospital. The boss threatened to fire her. Who needs such a maid? What work is there? Mother Alyona was already moving around the house. But she was still so young. And Alyona, the eldest daughter, couldn't help her own person. If it weren't for Alyona, Mother would feel much better now. The professor also said that the pregnancy and childbirth had completely undermined the health of the woman. Big tears were running down the girl's cheeks. It was hard to breathe from the restrained wheezes. Alyona still could not take herself in her hands. And then the car stopped right in front of her. Stopped and stopped, you think. Maybe it's just. Someone was brought to a stop. This happens. Alyona tried to calm down because of all her might, so as not to frighten people. Where is she going? The glass on the opposite driver's seat slowly fell down. Alyona met with a look with gray, attentive eyes. It was a young man, a little older than Alyona by the look. He looked at the girl with unquenchable interest, and she was crying all the time, unable to calm down. I told you that something was wrong with her. I noticed it from afar. The old man's voice from the back seat gave way. The man turned to the invisible passenger and nodded. And then he turned to Alyona. Girl, what's wrong with you? Do you need help? No, Alyona said. She suddenly felt ashamed that she was sitting and crying in front of everyone. People stopped because of her. They were going somewhere on their own. Maybe they were in a hurry. No, don't be shy. If someone offended you or something happened, the man continued. Then the back door of the car opened. An old woman came out of the salon. Light brocade suit, gray hair, dressed in an elegant bow. This is an old woman. It was like that old lady in a trolleybus handkerchief who couldn't find money for a ride. And yet it was her. Alyona recognized her. What a coincidence. They have a big city. What a chance they would have to meet again. And yet it happened. Oh, I know you. The old lady smiled kindly and warmly. Andre, this is the same girl from the trolleybus. Remember, I told you, who paid for me when I went to the hospital to see you. The man also left the car. Now both grandmother and grandson were standing opposite Valina, who, surprisingly, even dried up tears. Well, of course, remember this story? And then looked at Alyona. Imagine, I got into a light accident. I was left in the hospital overnight, just to watch. I didn't even want to tell my grandmother, just that her friend was a nurse in this hospital. She chatted with me. Well, my grandmother left all her business, bought me food and medicines for a year ahead on the rest of my pension, and ran into the hospital. Now you are again ironic. The old lady looked at her grown-up grandson with pride. And now you will understand me when you will raise your child from a young age and put your soul into it. Anxieties. Alyona was pleased to watch this friendly interweaving. Kind and indifferent, sensitive people who clearly love each other very much. And I, for some reason, then in the trolleybus thought that your grandson was a boy or a teenager. I was surprised that the old lady was not so surprised. I was surprised that the old lady was not so surprised. I was surprised that the old lady was not so surprised. I was surprised that the old lady was not so surprised. I was surprised that the old lady was not so surprised. I was surprised that the old lady was not so. Alyona admitted. For me, he is always small, even though he has already grown 2 meters tall and has long provided for himself. The old woman smiled. Well, what kind of trouble did you have, dear? Do not be shy, tell me. Good girl you are. You helped me then. You were not indifferent. Maybe we will help you with something. Alyona sighed. But how could these people help her? Alyona faced unsolvable problems, too difficult for her, and no one in the whole world can help her. Nevertheless, the girl suddenly realized that she really wanted to share her troubles with someone. And at least they will sympathize, they will feel sorry for them. Alyona suddenly realized that she was hiding her worries from others all the time. With the one who was in her heart, because she had a sick heart and she couldn't worry. And here they are, potential listeners. They sit next to each other, asking to open their souls. Well, Alyona needs this now. Will you tell me what happened to you? The old lady asked again. Don't you hurry, Alyona clarified. My story is not too short. We are not in a hurry, the grandmother and grandson answered in a choir. Well, Alyona nodded her head. Only I suggest we arrange ourselves in some more pleasant place. Oh, there's a nice pizzeria over there. What do you think? I'm in. The old lady immediately responded. I also nodded, and Alyona, with a happy face, thought about how much money she had left on the map. That's great. A cozy atmosphere, stylish furniture, pleasant music. Paid for the order himself. The company was set up behind a table, hidden behind a rack with living flowers. Well, now tell me about your trouble, the old lady smiled. And we'll all think together how to help you. Okay. Alyona nodded, still wondering why these people should listen to her and, moreover, help her. Think about it. She paid for the old lady in the trolley bus. It's just nonsense, not worth discussing the actions. But since they ask so much, and Alyona told them everything, and about her life with her mother in a tiny flat, and about the constant feeling of guilt for the illness of the most dear person, and about the fears for the life and health of her mother, which Alyona had experienced from an early age. The girl also mentioned Oleg. She said that she was going to meet his parents on the day of the trolley bus. She didn't tell her mother and father about the details, but only said that they made her understand that she was not a couple with their son. She said that after that she broke up with her fiancé. This story had nothing to do with the case, but Alyona couldn't resist. The separation with Oleg still tormented her. The girl didn't tell anyone about her feelings and experiences. And then, suddenly, there were attentive listeners. And at the same time, the girl shared with them that she still felt her soul as a disappointment in her beloved person. The old lady's verdict was that the people were rotten. They're not good. There will be no good in their lives. She will marry her old son to a suitable lady. There will be no love between them, no consent. We know, we've been swimming. There are many such examples before our eyes. Life will punish your little boy and his parents many more times. Andrei didn't say anything, but he looked at Alyona with such compassion, with such participation that words were not required. The girl felt the support and approval of this person. Pleasant sensations. Then again, a part of the story about my mother came up. Alyona told me about the appointment of a famous professor and his verdict. And now my mother needs an expensive surgery, and it's urgent. I tried to find the money, but I couldn't. Even my colleague called, but he almost caught me as a fraud. That's why I cried out at the stop. After talking to him, what a fool. The old woman cried out in her heart. She doesn't know anything about people. I see you for the second time in my life, and I understand that you are a very honest and modest girl. And he has been dating you for so long and hasn't realized anything. What a bastard. Oleg, whom this old woman didn't even know, was very annoyed by her. It looked even funny, if not the tragicness of the situation. In general, I have nowhere to take money, said Alyona. And without surgery, Mom? The girl couldn't say a word, but the listeners understood everything. The old woman hugged Alyona on her shoulders, began to stroke her on the head. Alyona cried again. Where could she go from these stupid tears? Only the girl could not do anything to herself. She was listened to for the first time. It was expensive, but the trouble didn't go anywhere. And the problems didn't disappear on their own. The money didn't materialize from the air. The old woman was calming Alyona down. She whispered some comforting words, which made it easier for her. And Andrei? He silently looked at this picture and clearly imagined something. What is the point of this speech? Finally, the man asked. Alyona voiced the numbers that drove her into panic. Andrew, surprised, threw his eyebrows. And you, as you thought, grandson, the old lady sighed. These are the scenes we have now. A simple person cannot get sick. And what? This operation cannot be done for free. You can, Alyona answered, which she managed to cope with emotions without the help of a kind old lady. It's possible to wait for her for almost a year, but she doesn't have that much time. Well, I'm ready to give such a sum for treatment, Andrei said. Grandma looked at her grandson with pride and approval. Alyona, surprisingly, looked out of her eyes. Andrei can give her such a sum, but he doesn't look like such a rich man at all. He is dressed well, but not black. His car is good, but not as elite as that of Oleg. And in general, how can you accept such a gift from almost strangers? Alyona's head is buzzing. How can she think of such details when her mother slowly dies without surgery? And yet she still worries. I'm afraid I can't accept this amount. It's somehow wrong. Everything is right and fair, said the old lady. You helped me in a difficult situation, and now Andrei is helping you. Boomerang, have you heard about this? The amounts are very different. And what did the old lady not give up? Who has what opportunities? Don't worry. Andrei smiled and covered Alyona's warm hand with his warm hand. A friendly, calming gesture, which made the girl's soul feel lighter. I do have such an opportunity. Moreover, I spend a certain amount of money on charity every year. This is the rule of the iron. So, Alyona didn't understand anything. If this Andrei is so rich, why his grandmother didn't have money for the trip? Andrei is a good boy. He's a successful businessman, said the old woman with pride. I raised him from a child. When his parents died, he was just a little boy. I'm not even his grandmother's relative, just a lonely neighbor. I couldn't accept that my dear neighbor's child would end up in the orphanage. So I took him to my place. I raised him like my grandson, and he was smart and not old enough. And serious. I understood right away that the boy would go far. And so it was. Grandma doesn't miss the moment to boast of me. Andre smiled. But she is right. I really managed to build a business that brings stable income. We make furniture for orders. We already have a lot of branches, and not only in our city. There is even a branch in Moscow, the old lady replied with admiration, looking at her grandson. Every year I spend a certain amount on charity. Let this year be your mother's. What was the chance we would come across you at the moment when you were sobbing from despair and helplessness at the bus stop? Such accidents just don't happen. So you really can give us such money? Alyona still couldn't believe her happiness. But I can't just take them like that. Let it be a list. I will return the debt slowly. I will return everything. You are so stubborn. The old woman shook her hands. I understand that you are not comfortable. Andre shook his head, carefully looking at Alyona. I see it by your behavior. I know how to deal with people. He knows how to deal with people. The grandmother confirmed the words of her grandson. There is no other way in business. Let's do this then. I've long wanted to invest in some new enterprise. We'll hire you to a company where they sew clothes for orders. As I understand from your story, you're a talented tailor. The amount for your mother's treatment will be part of the investment in this company. And then, when this enterprise starts to bring income, and this will definitely happen, I know these things. You will gradually give me this money as a part of the profit which I owe to the investor. I hope you have explained it clearly. Melina nodded. What was happening was more and more like a fairy tale. Investments, the company, new interesting work, and most importantly, money for the operation of Mom. Is it really happening in reality? Alyona was suddenly scared that she would wake up now, and it would turn out that she just saw a wonderful dream. But no, everything turned out to be true. Andre and Alyona exchanged phones. His grandmother also took Alyona's number. Call me when you feel bad, said the old woman. And so, don't disappear at all. You're a very nice person. It's interesting to talk to you. And then, everything turned around quickly. It started to flow. Alyona's life changed every day. Even her head was spinning a little because of these changes. First of all, Alyona's mother was sent to Moscow for surgery. Andre not only paid for the necessary medical procedures, but also organized everything to the smallest detail. He bought tickets, agreed to rent a house for Alyona in Moscow, drank a comfortable room for her mother, found all the rare medicines on the list. Alyona would definitely not have been able to cope on her own, especially since she was so fast. Andre? He solved all the problems, like a snap of a finger. What an amazing person. Andre didn't say much, only on the case. He was a rather quiet man. Often, Andre and Alyona went to work together and both kept silent. But this silence was not agnatus. It did not cause any awkwardness. The girl felt the waves of warmth and acceptance coming from Andre. She gave herself a good report that she fell in love with him. Well, just an ideal man. But every time a girl had such thoughts, she would pull herself together. Andre. He must have a second half. The man is not married. He has no ring on his finger, but of course he is not free. Of course, his choice is also perfect. Some kind of beauty with a model appearance, with a pure soul and flawless manners. Where is Alyona going? So Alyona only had time to dream that one day Andre would pay attention to her as to a girl. But these dreams were too much, it seemed to Alyona. For 2 weeks, while her mother was recovering in the hospital after a serious operation, Alyona spent her time in Moscow. Every day she visited her mother, brought her some food, and encouraged her mother. The doctor said that the operation was successful, and also added that the patient had managed to jump into the last car of the train leaving. just a little bit more and, in a word, Andre and his grandmother met very promptly. Grandmother Andre was constantly in touch. She was taking care of Elena's health and her mother's health. She was happy with the girl's clear improvement, and she also told her about the places she should visit in Moscow in her free time, where Elena had only not been during this time. What she had not seen. It was very exciting, because before that, the girl never came to Moscow. Andre also called often, but the character of the conversations with him was rather business. The man was engaged in the design of a new OO, the company, the director, and the chief master, which was to become Elena. This was a little disturbing for the girl. Will she cope? No, she can create new models and so. That's her. It's great that she will finally have the opportunity to earn what she really likes, what inspires. The girl has long felt that she is burying talent in the ground, working in an atelier as a simple porter. It's not at all the same as sewing clothes on order to fit things by figure. This is where the flight of fantasy is. But now we'll have to get into paper questions. After all, Alyona will be the director and co-owner of the company. Nothing. She'll manage. The main thing is that they saved Mom. Now Alyona will do everything to make the company prosper, and Andre will not regret his decision. She will give him all the money, even more. Time has passed. Mom has become very strong. She was fired. Mother and daughter came back home with full plans and hopes for a new life. Mother came back to work. Now she didn't need to take the hospital for the hospital. She looked young, healthy again, full of energy, like a woman. Elena was immersed in her newly found company. Work was. Andre helped her with documents and legal issues. He didn't even have to ask. He felt as if he had some kind of inner feeling when and where problems arise. And he solved them easily and playfully, however, as always. Elena fought with herself with all her might, trying not to give her feelings to Andre. He saved her in a difficult and seemingly hopeless situation. Of course, the role of the savior caused romantic feelings in Elena. But does it need Andre? I doubt it. He's just a good person who couldn't get past the troubles of the girl who was crying at the stop, especially since he had the opportunity to help her. And he's also a businessman who decided to try a new project from Ilya, where they sew clothes for the order. This is a potential source of good profit. That's why the man got involved in it. Only that. Andre was serious, silent, even a little grumpy. Looking at him, it was difficult to imagine how kind and sensitive a person he was. One day he told Elena about his life. It happened one evening when they sat down for a report. Andre lost his parents in early childhood. In a wooden house where they lived together, a fire began. The alert neighbor, the old lady from the trolleybus, called the firefighters in time. They rushed quickly, but the wooden building was like a matchbox. By their arrival, it burned to the ground. Andre was lucky. His mother put him to sleep in a carriage in the yard, in the fresh air, and in the meantime she was busy with the kitchen, which was immediately cut off from the exit by fire. His father repaired the attic and also did not get out. The house was old. The wiring had to be changed long ago, and there were bars on the windows, left by the former owners. Andre's parents were in a trap, but he himself was not hurt. The boy was taken by the neighbor who raised the alarm. She loved Andre's parents. She told the boy many times that they were very good and hardworking guys. Both are homegrown, both smart and aimed at success. They would achieve much in life if not for the damned fire, said Andre, sometimes a pious man. You will have to live for the three of them and fulfill all the plans and hopes of your parents. Andre tried very hard to be the kind of person whose mother and father would be able to be proud of. Andre always studied well. There was time for walks and extra classes. The boy had already demonstrated that his hands grow where they should. When he was a child, Andre learned to make simple furniture himself. And when he was only years old, he and a couple of friends went on a detour to sell what he had made. The light chairs and tables quickly disbanded. People bought simple furniture for the garden, for the dacha. Andrei even received the first orders then. Slowly, little by little, Andrei started his own production. By the end of school, he already had his own company, with hired workers, constant suppliers and buyers. Everything was as it should be, but unofficially, since Andrei remained imperfect, but his money was quite real. Then the guy easily entered the local economy university. He specifically chose this direction to know how to properly and officially conduct his business. Well, at one fine moment I decided to legalize my mini firm. Andrei smiled, remembering those times. It worked out. They opened branches, and now I am the owner of my own mini empire. After that, Alyona's story was even more respected by Andrei. What a human being. He got up from the bottom himself, walked all the way from homemade furniture to the network of furniture manufacturers. Great. Alyona and Andrei's feelings didn't go away. On the contrary, they were burning day by day. The outside is calm, even harsh. Andrei, nobody knew what kind and attentive he really was. His girlfriend was lucky. I wonder what she was like, and how she feels about her beloved being literally missing at work for days. Then she started her own furniture mini empire, then a new project, an atelier. Alyona gradually became a businesswoman. Now she knew a lot, and she solved almost all the problems by herself, without the help of Andrei. The girl even fulfilled her old dream, got on the wheel. She gave up her rights and bought a new car in the salon. It was a cheap foreign car, but it was a good and reliable car. Alyona was a very careful driver. But unfortunately, not everything depends on one road user. Skippers. There are enough of them everywhere. Once Alyona was caught by such an amateur of breaking the rules. This happened right at the intersection. Alyona hit her head against the wheel. Nothing serious, but the blow went off. The ambulance that arrived on the spot took her to the regional hospital. She had to put on a few stitches. Alyona was sitting in the operating room. She was treated. The surgeon worked on her forehead. The girl didn't feel any pain. She was only thinking about how badly her favorite car was damaged. When the tow truck was taking we must exclude the concussion of the brain. Alyona was honestly bored in her single-bedroom room. She was not going to go to the hospital because she did not even take a book with her. Now, at least, she would read, but only the phone remained. The girl's mother said that she would spend the night with her friend. She did not tell her about the accident. Alyona used to take care of her loved one from stress, although her mother's health no longer caused any concern. Alyona lay on her bed, machine turning the news tape. When the door of the room with the sound of a bang burst, Andrei was standing on the doorstep. His hair was wrinkled, and he saw anxiety. When he saw Alyona, surprised, looking at him from the bed, he jumped up to her and hugged her tightly. I was so afraid to lose you. As if a warm wave rolled Alyona from head to toe. Andrei so sincerely uttered this phrase. She is not indifferent to him. Wow. The girl happily clung to him. She had dreamed about it for so long. I was afraid that something serious was going on with you. Andrei moved away a little and looked into the girl's eyes. He saw a picture of your old car in the local public. He recognized the numbers. It was written there that the driver was in a serious condition and was taken to the hospital. I think I couldn't do it without you. I couldn't do it anymore. Alyona smiled at me all right. It was so deliberately exaggerated that it would be more interesting for people to read. I just have a scratch on my forehead. The doctor put a couple of stitches in the dilloft. Andrei smiled in response. Well, now it seems like there is no point in hiding. I didn't tell you anything, because you were, well, kind of in a dependent position from me. I didn't want to embarrass you, create awkwardness. I don't know when I started feeling you. Maybe when you told us about your trouble in the pizzeria. Or after we were organizing your mom's treatment together. I don't know. But I've never met such sincere, honest, and beautiful people. Today, After learning about the accident, I was so afraid that I would lose you forever. It's such a fear. I've never experienced anything like it before." Alyona smiled. She will pick up the words to tell Andre about her feelings, but a little later, he must have seen everything in her eyes. Andre is smart, and he feels people very subtly. "Well, you've now found yourself in the same situation that your grandmother once smiled at Alyona. Remember, back then at the bus stop, she said that someday you would understand her. You would understand how scary it can be for your loved ones." That's what happened. And it's true. In Andre's eyes, a cheerful light lit up. The situation is very similar. Grandma was right, as always. And so, that's all.